How's it going, everyone? Blueknight here, and welcome back to another Ratchet Clank Rift Apart video. So before I get into today's video, I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys a fair warning that this video contains extensive spoilers for some of the game's Easter eggs and references. Now, depending on whether or not you've gotten the chance to play Rift Apart, I'm fully aware that a couple of Easter eggs might have gotten spoiled for some of you guys in the thumbnail. So please understand that I try my best to keep my thumbnails as spoiler-free as possible, but in the case of this particular topic, that was a bit harder of a task to do. But regardless of that, this is your last chance to turn back before we dive deeper into these and other Easter eggs that I personally believe to be canon, or at least partially canon, to the Ratchet & Clank universe, despite being from other franchises. So without further ado, let's get started by checking out the very thing that started this whole discussion in the first place, the Rhino 8. For those of you who don't know, back on June 7th, which was just a few days before the launch of Rift Apart, Insomniac Games showed off the Rhino 8 as part of this Twitter takeover thing they were doing to celebrate the game's upcoming launch. And before the official reveal of this weapon, Insomniac shared a few images of rifts appearing in some of Insomniac's other IPs, like Sunset Overdrive, and also other PlayStation franchises that were not developed by Insomniac, like Naughty Dog's Uncharted 4, with Nathan Drake's Jeep being pulled into a rift, a Thunderjaw from Horizon Zero Dawn, and last but not least, our favorite Devious Phoebius Raccoonus Sly Cooper. When I first saw this, I legit did not know what to make of it, especially since the Sly Cooper Funko Pop was announced just a few days prior, leading many across the internet, including myself, to think a new game was going to be announced soon, which ultimately did not happen. While others, also like myself, even thought this could be teasing a PlayStation All-Stars Round 2, with the rifts appearing in all of these other series, but nah, this was all done to build up the reveal of what the Rhino 8 could do, which is pretty much being an overpowered Easter egg generating machine, pulling characters and items from their respective dimensions into the game to do massive damage to enemies. And the one Easter egg Insomniac decided to show off that day, to give everyone a taste of what other Easter eggs to expect, was the Thunderjaw from Horizon Zero Dawn. Now, since I got my free copy of Horizon as part of PlayStation's Play at Home initiative, believe it or not, that was almost the only thing I played on my PS4 up until this announcement. The game was that good, and I can't wait for the sequel. So as you can imagine, seeing Horizon's machines appear in a Ratchet & Clank game was such a joy. But now that Rift Apart is officially out, we now know of pretty much every single Easter egg that this Rhino brings into the game, each one symbolizing Insomniac's relationship with their fellow studios from the PlayStation family. And they include Sly Cooper, Bentley, and the Cooper van, all of which representing their appearances from Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves, which was the last game in the series to be developed by Sucker Punch before they moved on to the Infamous series. I do find it a bit odd that they didn't go with the models from Sly 4, simply because they're more up to date, but I do get why they chose to use the Sly 3 models instead, even though Sly's never had two leg pouches before. I'm just going to take that part as a mistake on Insomniac's part, but it's because this was Sucker Punch's IP. They created Sly Cooper and debuted the series alongside Ratchet & Clank's debut that very same year. So what better way to represent that than to recreate the original models from the last Sly game they worked on. No signs of Murray though, which is a little strange. Although he's probably still behind the wheel after Panda King launched the van up to the Cooper Vault, the fireworks are still here. Jack and Daxter as they appear in Jak 3. Oh man, look at that added detail. Now, it's been a long time since Insomniac referenced Naughty Dog's dynamic duo in the Ratchet & Clank series. The last time I can recall Insomniac doing so was 2005's Ratchet Deadlocked, where Jack is a playable character for the co-op story mode, but he was only accessible to the second player. So Insomniac once again referencing the close relationship they've had with Naughty Dog since before they even joined the PlayStation family is just really nice to see. On top of seeing these three respective series appear together in one game again since PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, the precursor orb model, which you might as well consider a literal Easter egg because, you know, it's egg shape, from Uncharted 4 is also summoned by the Rhino 8, alongside some Uncharted related Easter eggs like Nate's Jeep from the same game, and the remaining Rhino 8 related Easter eggs consist of appearances from Insomniac's other titles, like the SS Ernie, I think I pronounced that correctly, from Song of the Deep, and Fizzy from Sunset Overdrive. Now, normally, Easter eggs like these would just be taken as fun little references and nothing more, but these ain't something like the Keyblade wrench replacements after collecting so many gold bolts. And while this will definitely excite fans of the Kingdom Hearts series, like VT and Vivi, this is clearly not canon. All this other stuff though, since for Rhino 8 is virtually punching holes into other dimensions, that means these respective series, as well as some others I'm about to get to, are very well canon to the Ratchet & Clank series due to how much they're implied to exist within, especially when we take into account one of the game's collectibles, known as the Lorbs. The Lorbs, like I discussed in the previous video, are this game's version of an audio log collectible. These specific collectibles tell the story of a Lombax named Mags, as he embarks on a mission that's given to him by Ratchet's dad, Caden, to map every single dimension in existence, thus creating the dimensional map, which details the exact location of every single dimension in existence, and combined with a Dimensionator, no dimension is off limits. Well anyways, Mags goes on to describe some of the dimensions that he's managed to map. He describes ones that sound like Sly Cooper's, Jak and Daxter's, Knack, and even Sackboy or Little Big Planet. Now, as for a set timeline for some of these series, namely Sly Cooper and Jak and Daxter, that's where things can get a bit more trickier to pinpoint. Because at the time Mags was mapping these dimensions, he was doing so years before the events of the first Ratchet & Clank game, before the Lombaxes fled to another dimension when Tachyon started hunting them all down, with Caden staying behind to protect the Dimensionator and sending Ratchet to planet Veldin, where he would be safe. Well, at least a couple of decades have passed since those initial mappings, which is a rather long time between certain points in those respective series, and how they appear in Rift Apart. Sure, the Cooper gang were still doing heists against other criminals before the events of the first game. I don't really know how far back though, obviously not very far, because the gang was only about 18 years old during the first game, which I'd suspect is about the time they left the orphanage.
I don't get it, Cooper. I've hunted you for years, tried to throw you behind bars, but when you get a chance to leave me in a cage, you set me free. Why?
And only 3 years had passed between Sly 1 and Sly 3, which is the game that's being represented in Rift Apart. However, it's possible Mags did not see Sly himself. Instead, he could have seen Connor Cooper, who is Sly's dad, sometime before the Fiendish Five wiped out Sly's family and stole the Phoebius Raccoonus. So everything seems to match up pretty well for both Sly's and Ratchet's canons. I just can't really say the same thing for Jak and Daxter's canon. Primarily because Mags describes Jak using a gun, something that he hadn't done until Jak 2, with Jak 3 taking place a short while afterward, which again is the game that's being represented here in Rift Apart. Now I get that this is the most iconic or popular design for Jak, because this is the design that tends to be used the most, with PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale being the most recent game before Rift Apart to make use of the design. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if this specific use of the design was done in reference to those Ratchet and Jak crossover posters from back in the day. Ah, memories. But by doing this, along with Daxter not wearing pants, which he does get at the end of Jak 3, just doesn't really add up to the amount of time that's passed in both Ratchet's and Sly's respective canons. Now, if they went with a different design for Jak, something closer to what was used in The Lost Frontier, which by the way, Naughty Dog actually created the intro for that game before handing the project off to High Impact Games. And if they gave Daxter his pants back, we could have had a better argument for how Ratchet & Clank's canon lines up with Jak and Daxter's. Now, it's remotely possible time moves a bit differently between Ratchet's and Jak's dimensions, but honestly, that's a bit of a stretch. As for all the other Easter eggs relating to other franchises like Knack, Sackboy, Sunset Overdrive, and Song of the Deep, I'm gonna take it that all of those are canon to the Ratchet & Clank series as of Rift Apart. But concerning the Horizon Zero Dawn and Uncharted Easter eggs, well, they both take place on Earth, just in different time periods. Uncharted takes place in the present day, while Horizon takes place in the far future, so alternate dimensions of Earth where time moves differently could easily explain things. Yes, I know, there are 3 different items from 3 different Uncharted games, but we gotta take into account that even though Sully's plane from the first game appears, the Furba dagger from the second game was still around before the plane was destroyed early on in the first game, while the Roadhog from Uncharted 4, that really complicates things. Yeah, this is basically just a safari vehicle, but just like with any other car model, the designs tend to change over the years, so whether or not this would have looked differently during the events of the first game, or depending on how many years the car's been in use, isn't really clear. Neither is it really important because the Uncharted Easter eggs, along with the Jak and Daxter ones, are likely just symbolic of Insomniac's and Naughty Dog's relationship and nothing more. But to sum up everything before ending the video, because I'm sure some of you might be a bit confused at this point, from what I could gather from Mags's audio logs, and the Rhino 8 punching holes into various dimensions, I believe that most of the Easter eggs and the respective series that we see are in fact canon to the Ratchet & Clank universe, and quite possibly, the Ratchet & Clank universe is canon within each series that's represented, just like Sly Cooper's canon lining up pretty well with what we learned in Rift Apart, and that's honestly pretty cool. Meanwhile, Uncharted's and Jak and Daxter's Easter eggs and references are kinda questionable in this regard. But yeah, that's all I've really got for this video. As always, if you guys have any questions about this whole subject, or even your own theories, be sure to leave everything down in the comments section below. Also be sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell to be notified of more Ratchet & Clank content coming your way real soon. And once again, thank you all so much for watching and the constant support. I've been Blueknight, and I'll see you guys back here next time.
What?